and welcome to EcoCraft Chats. Today we have Lourdes Still and Shannon Bahuaud here with us to talk about their work in EcoCraft. The C2 Center for Craft is located on Treaty 1 territory and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree Dakota, and the Dene people, and is on the homeland of the Métis Nation. Our water comes from Shoal Lake. So welcome, Shannon and Lourdes. My first question is for Shannon. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your research experience and how it relates to EcoCraft?
Yes, thanks. Thanks for having us. So my background is a little bit more researching in ethnoecology and truth and reconciliation, but for my master's in natural resource management, I had an interest in looking at circular economies and local sustainable textiles. So my project was actually following the Pembina Fiber Shed, which is a local group of fiber producers in Manitoba and like a geographical region that they kind of called the Pembina Fiber Shed. And their focus was looking at the kind of feasibility of growing flax for linen and producing linen in Manitoba. And so they did this really great grassroots project called the Flax to Linen Project. And I was following them with that and helping them with the evaluation of the project and just recording it and documenting it, and then kind of seeing where it can go from there. So yeah, that's in the context of climate change. It's just a lot about producing locally and reducing waste, mainly because my interest around it came from just really being, aware of how wasteful the fashion industry is, how it's a huge contributor for waste and pollution. A lot of the products use high amounts of resources just to end up in the landfill. So that was a reason I really wanted to explore what we have going on in our local economy and what we could also bring into it.
Absolutely. Textiles, I think, is the 7th most polluting industry on Earth, and that includes like fossil fuels, which is pretty shocking. Lourdes, do you want to tell us about your creative practice and how you brought that into your work for EcoCraft? And I'll bring up a photo of your work for EcoCraft as well.
Yeah, so the creative practice really, I think it came out naturally with kind of like what my business was. And so actually the art practice just like came after that. So with the flower farm, I was able to kind of explore more of my interaction with plants when I learned about that we can use plants for dyeing, and actually it was also through the Pembina Fiber Shed that I learned all about these things. And I think the first project that I heard from them is the growing indigo, and just like the concept behind it on how and the community involvement too, that to grow this plant and then use it after, which is now in my creative practice. It's also on that context of sustainable, looking for ways on how to do my art in a more responsible and mindful way. And so when the EcoCraft application came out and I was reading it, and it was it really felt kind of meant to be. I really want to apply for it because I do want to explore more about the natural dyeing aspect of my work already. And I thought it would be a really great opportunity and platform to show to other people too that how else can we interact with plants that we grow in our own green spaces.
Can you tell us a little bit about how your flower farm came to be? Because you started as a flower seller, and then you transformed some of your land that your home is on into your flower farm. And I feel like that story is quite compelling. If you'd like to give us a little bit of information.
Yeah. So I started I was a flower buyer. I got the job since in 2012, and then I was also very fascinated with the slow food movement and the idea of connecting who produces our food. And so at some point during my career as a flower buyer, so the company that I was working with is import flower from all over the world, but I was mostly buying from South America, from Colombia and Ecuador, which were our the flowers that we, that we enjoy all year round comes from. And then at some point at working at that job, if there is, I thought like if there is a slow food movement, is there also like a slow flower movement? And true enough, there is. And so kind of like the same idea, connecting the consumer to the people who grow their flowers. And I think my background as a flower buyer helped me like really appreciate too like what are how the benefits of supporting the local flower movement. And so in this art piece, my hope is that when people see this, that they will, there's that element of like surprise, that these colors is something that actually they can grow themselves, and then the flowers, they're dried, and hopefully like people who see the artwork can also appreciate flowers in a different state, because I think for most of us, it's trend right now, using dried flowers, but we also have to be careful that because most of them people dye and bleach them, so still are altering the beauty that is already natural with the flowers. So yeah, at first, at first we see maybe like flowers that doesn't really has nothing to do with climate change, but if we just really dig deep into it, that there is an opportunity to do it like kind of like more responsibly on how we enjoy the flowers that is present really like all our lives, right? Like in celebrating milestone, or in celebrating flowers is everywhere. And but there's also another way that we can enjoy flowers in a more eco-friendly way.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lourdes. Thank you for giving us a bit more information about that. I love the idea of a slow flower movement and a slow food movement. So what did your guys' collaboration work like? And like, how did you work together?
Well, we met a few times just to talk, and actually it was really great because I found we really connected around plants. Also, mainly my background before I went back to school, I was running my own small scale landscape and design and build company, and so my partner and I, we were focusing a lot on including native plants and looking at ecologically sound methods for designing and building the landscapes in people's yards. So I think Lourdes and I really connected on just the beauty around what nature has to give us as well, and the design components of that, as well as the native plants and just all of the uses that they have. Because I also did some herbal medicine, so we were just like, and she has all the knowledge around dyes, and so I think we discussed a lot about that for a while. So it was really great to get to know Lourdes in that way, and then just discussing these like our histories and Lourdes's experience with coming from the Philippines and the flower industry there, and like learning about the ecological side of that was really interesting for me. I don't know what you think, Lourdes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and I think with all the talk that Shannon and I did, it was just very encouraging to bounce idea with someone who gets it, who see the importance of like turning our lawns into garden beds, and make how it is beneficial, not only I think us like enjoying the beauty like right in our front yard, but also it has a positive impact ecologically too, and it becomes a conversation piece with our neighbors on why we're doing the more ecologically friendly doing on gardening. And yeah, so I think it was very encouraging being partnered up with Shannon, because when you have like some ideas that seems like not the norm, it's very easy to be discouraged. So the whole year that I'm working with Shannon, it was something like that I should continue doing on what I'm doing, because there are other people who gets it and who are kind of like working towards the same goal, and which in particular turning our lawns into something more productive and beneficial, not only for us, but also, for us, a habitat for native pollinators and such.
Mhm. And actually, it was also really fun doing like with the art. Is like Lourdes, it was the brains behind the operation in terms of the design of the piece. But I really loved how we were able to collaborate together on it. And she like welcomed me to come and help set up and got me on the ladder hanging things. And but then also, I picked and dried plants from my garden and some native plants. And we put them together. So I learned from that, experience of doing the arrangements, and really, really loved how we got to kind of work together even on the physical install.
Yeah. And we have a special guest with Lourdes, is Seema Goel, the curator of EcoCraft. Hello.
Hello.
So Seema, do you want to talk a little bit about Lourdes and Shannon's work? And then also maybe it would be great for you to answer how you feel it's helpful to have artists and scientists work together on projects like
Sure. That. Yes. Thank you so much for having me as a little add-on here today. So one of the things I appreciate the most about Lourdes and Shannon's collaboration is, one, that they found each other so that they could find a person who is in a completely different field, but a completely connected field, and to remind each other that they're not alone. Because I think that's a difficult space when you're in a new venture. But they're also both women with businesses, and they're people who have turned their desire for sustainability into something that also is their business practice and the central model of their business practice. And when we have eco-anxiety, which is pervasive right now, it's very hard to know what to do. And climate change is big and scary and overwhelming because it's a bigger scale than a human scale. And so it's wonderful to see people say, well, I can do something. Of course I can do something. And I'm going to start with what I have right now in front of me and what I'm actually passionate about, and not worry about, oh, is this going to be massive, popular for the masses? It doesn't need to be popular for the masses. It needs to be popular for the people that you need to connect with, who believe in what you believe in, who will come to you, and it will transform things in small steps, but they're just as important. And maybe they're even more important because they empower other people to say, I can take those small steps too. And the transformation of a lawn is a really simple thing, because many, many people own a piece of land that's 20 feet by 40 feet in front of their house. And it's in grass, and it's some historical colonial expression that we have borrowed from the English that has to do with having a piece of yard that you don't need, so much that you don't need, that you can keep it in grass. That's a super strange thing, right? So even to question our aesthetic about our landscape and where it comes from and how we can change it and how we can we can own it again for ourselves, so that's it's something beautiful that makes sense here. So often we borrow aesthetics from other places, and this is to say we don't need to borrow an aesthetic. We can actually embrace the Canadian landscape, the plants that live here, understand that the plants are connected to the animals and wildlife, and do something right in our own spaces. So I really applaud that aspect of their individual and connected endeavor. And I just find it very inspiring, their work, because it's very positive. They're actually out there doing it.
Yeah, they're doing the thing. They're doing the thing, and in a way that feels like accessible. Like if you have a little city front garden, like front yard, that feels accessible to transform, rather than it being like, well, it's the corporations causing all the waste. It's the thing that we can do in our homes right now. And
it's okay. I mean, we're given too much burden of saying sustainability is on you as an individual, and it's really not on us, because we can't transform our energy systems. We can't transform our food systems. We can't transform our textile systems for the most part, right? We can make some small steps. You can own an electric car, and you can try and buy local, and you can work with your local farmer. I'm not saying you can't do things, but those things are usually not very far reaching, and they have to do with consumptive models. But this is not a consumptive model. This is a generative model that says, I will create change through what I have right here, and it will have a long-term effect.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that. Then you asked me another question. Oh, how art and science connects. Is that it? So that's my whole raison d'etre in terms of the practice that I have, is that art and science are ultimately connected. They're both creative. They're both rigorous. They're both risk-taking. They need serendipity. They need connections. They need to network. They have many, many things in common. They just go at their questions. They often have the same questions even, but they approach them from very different directions. And the purpose of their answers is quite different. So if a scientist is looking at birdsong and an artist is looking at birdsong, they are maybe looking at the same species and asking a lot of things that overlap, but one person will be looking at it to understand how birds are communicating, and one person, and maybe, you know, like how that communication influences the fecundity of the, like there'll be some very specific kind of question that is relating to. And the artist will be looking at it as like, what would the absence of that birdsong be in my environment, and how would it change my experience of space? And how do I relate this larger question of the universal experience of birdsong to my personal individual experience, or my viewer's individual experience? So they'll look at the same things, but with very different agendas. And I think that one of the values of EcoCraft is reminding people that there is a bridge between and across art and science, and that they're both forms of communication. And artists have a gift of communicating difficult ideas without all the words and without all the data and without all the graphs. But they can make you feel. And the story is what motivates people. So EcoCraft allows for some stories to surface and connect to the public in a way that sometimes scientists have a difficulty with approaching. But it's our story as humans that motivate us, that connect us, that let us understand we have community, that can forge community across huge distances. We can never have met a person and share a story with them and feel connected. So I think that's a really wonderful aspect of this project.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Seema. I really love how you're talking about how both of them have very actionable projects and businesses that sort of give hope to what we can do as consumers. And I agree and I really love the idea of artists sort of being able to give feeling to this data that scientists produce. I think that's really lovely. So Shannon, do you have any suggestions for where we can learn more about the sort of things you work on with climate change? So any resources?
Yeah. Well, in the larger context of circular economies, there's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and they are they really have a lot of good resources, as well as a podcast that focuses on so many different areas on what that looks like. And then in terms of fiber sheds, that was a new concept for me when I encountered the Pembina fiber shed, and it's based off of a few models that already exist in other places in the world and in the United States. So I would look at the Pembina fiber shed. They have their own website. They have so many amazing resources. They have an entire inventory of the fiber producers and artists and events that they're holding. They do education. And then there are also other fiber sheds that kind of were like some of the inspirations for the Flax to Linen project, for example. And this is maybe like, it's like the do your own research. I don't want to tell people to do your own research, but I think it is really important to know where are the materials, like what are the clothes that we wear? Where are those fibers coming from? Are they petroleum based? Are they recycled? And, start, again, like thrifting is a lot more popular these days, but it is that whole concept of reusing something and before you reuse something, like, do you need something? You know, do you need it? So it's really the hierarchy of like reduce and then reuse and then recycle, and that those are the main concepts in a circular economy of like, before, when making a product, you need to, the design should have a complete life cycle where it can be repaired, it can be reused, it can be broken down and recycled, like all these things, and then eventually it biodegrades. So that's like another really important thing to keep in mind when we're really learning about where do the products that we purchase come from, where are the fibers coming from, and it might actually lead to some kind, you know, also the feel. Like, I find like even natural fibers, when we're looking more on protein based, so that's from wool, for example, or plant based, so that's maybe not cotton, because cotton uses a lot of resources, but learning now about linen, and why is that more sustainable than cotton, and hemp, why is that more sustainable? Like, what minimal resources do they use? How much stronger can the fibers be? Like, these kind of questions come up as we start to explore and learn more about where things come from. So I think those resources are a little bit more commonly found now, and especially through the Femina Fiber Shed and learning more about circular economies. I think that those are things that people can kind of come across. So yeah.
Thanks, Shannon. And Lourdes, where can we find more of your work?
Yeah, so I have a website, masaganaflowerfarm.com. It is pretty updated on, you know, the things that I'm doing at the farm, and also the Instagram page, where it's, you know, more like updated like on a more regular basis. Yeah, so that's where people can find more info about my work.
Awesome. So EcoCraft is open until October 29th at the C2 Center for Craft at 329 Cumberland Avenue in Winnipeg. Our gallery is open 12 to 4 Wednesday to Saturday. If you can't come see the show in person, we'll have a digital tour available in the next few weeks on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Manitoba Craft Council, and you can find the Craft Council at c2centerforcraft.ca. Thank you, Shannon, Lourdes, and Seema for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks for